/ Utah School for the Deaf and the Blind board meeting. And we're going to have to, those of us who are here, going to have to turn around to see our, hello everybody. So let's do a roll call, see if we've got everybody here either in person or remotely. Member Bogus.
Yes, sir.
Member Booth. Member Klein. I saw her. Okay, she's here. Member Davis.
Present.
Member Green. Yeah. Member Reel. I saw her. She's on her way. Yeah, she's just out. Member Vice Chair Earl is here. Vice Chair Hart.
Chair Moss.
Yes.
I apologize to interrupt. Will you please remind everyone to use their microphones for those individuals on Zoom so they can hear?
Yeah, thank you. I think we all heard you. So, okay. Vice Chair Hart.
Here.
Member Hymas.
Here.
Member Carey. We don't have Member Carey. Member Lear is here. She just stepped out. She's with us though. Chair Moss is here. Member Norton. Member Norton. Okay. Member Straight.
Sheriff is up there.
Okay. And Member Wood.
Yes.
All right. So as authorized by Utah Code 52-4, this meeting is being held electronically and with an anchor location at the Utah State Board of Education offices. The public may also attend electronically. The meeting is being streamed to the public on YouTube. That's at USBE-media. So we have a fairly short agenda. We've got one action item, 3 information items. The first up is an action item 5.1, Teacher Student Success Account Grant Application. We'll turn to Carl Empey, our Finance Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chairs, and board members. This is our application that we need to come to you and present that we want to apply for this grant and to receive your approval to do it. The dollar amount of this grant is $68,079.68, and we're going to be using those funds for a social and emotional counselor, similar to what we did last year. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but we do need your vote. As you mentioned, this is an action item.
Thank you very much, Director Empey. One question. So could you remind all of us what happened last year exactly when you say it's the same thing? Just give us a little bit of the background there.
Yeah, we were able to hire a social and emotional counselor to help coordinate and counsel with our students that were struggling emotionally, that to increase our student population that was struggling with their social and emotional needs increased dramatically during COVID, as I'm sure all the LEAs and charter schools value school. It made a big difference. We had about $50,000 funding last year, and this is $68,000 this year. So we'll be able to keep that counselor, and we hired that counselor subject to additional funding being provided in future years. So this will give her in a second year of work and assistance to our student population.
Thank you. Any other board member questions or comments? Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. One is, what is the social and emotional learning curriculum that's used, if any?
Superintendent Coleman, you want to tackle that one? Or Susan Patton?
Yeah, so we had a curriculum previously, but we reviewed it in the last few years, and we kind of pick and choose different items depending on the needs of our students. In the deaf school, it's much more extensive because those are most of our campus kids. And so our school psychologists work closely with Superintendent Tanner to make sure that the things they're going over are appropriate. And if you'd like, we can talk with you more about what that is when she gets back to town. And then Susan, you can maybe share anything from the blind school that you do.
Well, we actually are not using a planned curriculum for our campus kids. And then as far as our outreach kids, we're going along with what whatever that school or district is using, and modifying that or trying to help just support their school. The deaf school is using something different as far as their curriculum is concerned. I can't speak to that, but I know that Michelle would be more than happy to send you that member Bogus as far as what they're doing in the deaf school.
Okay, thank you. Could you, when you send that, would you be willing to send me what was the previous curriculum?
Sure, I'll make a note of that and make sure that that's sent.
Thank you. And then I just have one final question, and perhaps it's my own misunderstanding, but you're asking for this board's approval for an application, and maybe I misunderstood it, that you're submitting to this board?
We need your permission, Member Bogus, to be able to submit to the state office. Tracy Van Deventer is the one that's in charge and has been a big help with us with this grant application process. Every LEA and charter has had to go to their board to receive approval to be able to apply for this grant.
So then, and maybe this is a question for the chair, would we then have a conflict as the state board to approve an application that we approve the application for?
I think,
I'm just wondering because
Yeah.
I'm genuinely wondering, I'm not trying to be facetious.
no, I get, so this is kind of one of our dual function things. When you're on a community council at the local level, you apply to your district board for approval, and once it's approved, it goes in, it's basically an administrative process of releasing the funds from our USBE office. So in this case, we're acting as the local board for USDB, approving it like we would the Wasatch District. And then it goes in, and we don't have to hear it again as USBE. We hear it as their board. I don't know if that clarifies or makes it more muddy.
So we will never have to,
We as USBE do not have to approve this, correct?
we will never have to approve this a second time?
No, just as if, your local LEA, when they approve the TSSA plan and that money, then it goes to our USBE office and they release the funds. Am I getting this right? Or do I
Yeah,
need
so from what I
clarification?
understand, and I'm sure that Deputy Jones would correct me, this is, once it gets approved by the board, the state, in order to release the funds, simply needs to know that the board approved it. So
The
there
local
is no, the local board.
Which is us today.
The LEA approved it.
Right.
So once it's approved, there's no approval at our level. It just releases the funds.
When she says ours, USBE does not need to approve it as the state board. We
Okay.
just need to
So
approve
there's
it
not
as
a
the
second
local
approval.
board for USDB, and then the funding's automatically released through the trust lands office.
Okay.
Like, for instance, Canyon's money isn't, their plans aren't looked at our level. We just simply need assurance that they followed the process. And it was found in prior audits that some districts weren't getting their plans approved in quite the way the statute was written. And so this is a check. I think this is the first year that we are making sure that they have a plan before we release the funds. In the past, the funds were released and there was no delay that we made sure there was a plan. We just assumed there was a plan.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you all. I appreciate you.
Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, can you tell me, are you using Panorama? I'm just trying to figure out which social emotional programs that I do have pretty significant concerns with. Is this something
No,
that,
I'm pretty sure we're not, but the curriculum isn't funded by this grant anyway. This is just
Okay.
one position that we have in the school.
Okay.
So, but I can hear that it's probably good for us to give a presentation on this.
Would
or at
you-
least
yeah, would you
some-
mind putting that forward to us so that we really have an understanding of what your idea of social emotional learning is? Because there's just a variety out there, so that we know it's of the beneficial, not, trying to change dispositions of kids or whatever, but it's trying to help with their academics and help them be successful. So,
Yes, yeah, so
We're more than
we'll make
happy
that we'll make that an agenda item in our next meeting.
I would also be interested in what kind of data is being collected on kids in this, or if any. So anyways, those are my thoughts and concerns, so thank you.
Member Klein.
Okay, you mentioned a grant that doesn't cover curriculum, but so I'm assuming the grant money is what you're you applied for a grant that requires you to have a social emotional learning expert or specialist. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that why this is being asked for? Because there is something out there that's requiring you to hire this position.
Okay, so no, this grant requires us to have an element that is part of our strategic plan. And so the priority that justifies this grant in our LEA is that we're going to use it to fund one position. This strategic priority was to help with the social emotional learning and well-being of deaf and hard of hearing students. And this one position is a school psychologist that works on our Salt Lake campus, I believe. But anyway, so this doesn't require a connection to a specific curriculum. It just requires us to define our advisory council and board to approve what it's going to be used for.
So Superintendent Coleman, let me just maybe clarify a little bit further and tell me if I'm wrong. This is not a separate grant that has criteria that you go to the government or some private source. This is just submitting for the release of trust lands money in accordance with your TSSA plan that's been approved by the community council, which in your case is the advisory council, and then is approved by your local board, which today is us, correct? So
there's-
you choose to apply whatever part of your strategic plan, but you are not governed by that. Am I off? Okay, I'm sorry. Chair Hart, Vice Chair Hart pointed out, this is TSSA, not community council money. Same idea. You have to align to your strategic plan, and that's up to you to select, and you've chosen this as part of your strategic plan, rather than some external
So there's no
criteria,
grant.
correct? Okay, so go ahead.
So there's
No grant in the
grant.
sense that you're applying for a specific grant. You're just getting your TSSA money, which requires you to identify what part of the strategic plan you're seeking to
Okay.
promote.
This is part of the TSSA,
Right.
What does
which
that stand for?
Teacher and student, Teacher Student Support, Success
Act.
Act. And
Is that
we are
federal?
using, no, it's, and it came out of the compromise that had to do with the gas tax. It's a fund, it's a separate fund of money. We are using, from what I understand, and this is going back to Finance Committee a year ago, we are using the Utah Grants Management Program in order to be accountable for those funds. Because they were, in the past, a few places were giving out the money, and later on, we found out that perhaps they didn't follow the procedures for making the plan. So now we're using the grants management system to have more transparency and accountability for those funds. But basically, a lot of places it mirrors, it's very similar to the land trust process, but they are two separate pots of money,
May I piggyback real quick? Who's they?
which they,
You said they were not, and I'm wondering.
LEAs.
LEA, so that's a general they, not USDB.
Right. LEAs, the money is distributed through the LEA, and then the LEA figures out how to distribute it to their schools, I think. And all of that is subject to Deputy Jones' clarification.
Thank you.
I think we
That
got
helps
it.
a
Any
lot.
further questions? Yeah, this is part of our dual role, and then we got two related programs between Community Council Land Trust and TSSA, but
Yeah, this is
Okay.
not part of it at all. It's just a pot of money the legislature set aside. We have to identify what it's used for, and that it's part of our overall strategic plan that has been reviewed by the advisory council and the board previously. So it's not even a full salary. It's part of a salary of one of our school counselors.
okay. If there are no other questions or comments, do we have, Member Straight, are you on?
I am. I
I'm
have my
sorry.
hand up.
We're not seeing a hand. I apologize. All we can see is a microphone, but feel free to, do you guys have him?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Member Straight.
Thank you. So the primary issue before us today is, as the board of USDB, they're asking for our approval of their TSSA plan there to submit for the grant money. So I see that as a primary. That's a simple, easy question for me. The secondary issue that came up was, the first thing that was addressed and was brought up further was curriculum. So do we operate for USDB for curriculum the same way that other LEAs do for their districts or their charters?
Superintendent
Well,
Coleman?
what
is
do you
that-
mean exactly by that?
So we always say local control, local boards approve the curriculum. Are we the do we approve the curriculum of USDB?
Well, we have, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has not actually
No.
approved our curriculum in the past.
No, not that I am aware of, not as far as a school for the blind is concerned. I mean, those curriculums are listed in our, like our annual report and in our school improvement plans that we use that we're looking forward to every year. Every division has their school improvement plan. So those curriculums are listed there. And what I was thinking as far as board member Straight, when you were asking, I was thinking that we're using.
So I'm fine. We don't have to.
Pardon? Sorry, I missed that.
We don't need to continue down the. Appears to me, or sounds to me, that perhaps we don't have a role when it comes to curriculum. And so the question regarding social emotional learning and what curriculum USDB is using is not a proper question, Chair, or
Oh, no, I believe the board definitely could have an appropriate role in approving curriculum. I'll tell you, the way we get curriculum, we don't take curriculum and use it because curriculum is not accessible for us.
Right. That's what that was going to be my point.
There's not a curriculum to use. And so we find whatever's accessible and we create curriculum that is accessible for our kids. And so that's probably why, in a pragmatic level, the board has not taken a role in improving that. But I think it's a good discussion we could have if you'd like to.
Yeah. So is there a policy in place for sensitive materials, for example, then?
Yes.
Okay. Who developed that?
And the board approved that. In fact, the board wrote that policy and we've adopted it. Yes.
So we do have a responsibility. And so the question regarding the social emotional learning and curriculum was actually just fine. That's a great question, right?
Yeah.
Member Earl, or I'm sorry, Member Straight, did that answer the question?
Well, I think so. I just wonder if we have more of a responsibility that we've been taking in regards to curriculum in this regard. But I think that's a question for later, and it's not necessarily germane to the topic at hand. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Member Straight. Good point. And we now have one advisory board member from this board that could help with that, or I think we need to finalize that. But yeah, great larger point. So Member Earl has a question or a motion.
I just make a motion that the board approve the TSSA grant application for $68,000. Oh, no, $68,000.
Point of order.
Yes.
Point of order.
Who's doing point of order?
I did. I had my hand up. I was waiting.
Oh, so sorry, Cindy.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Member Davis.
Go ahead.
We're not seeing hands here. I think Kelsey's trying to get access to the show of hands, but go ahead. You've got the floor.
It's okay. And I'm fine with the motion. I just worry before we make the motion. I just want to say I'm 100% in support of this, especially since we heard the data a couple of years ago about the emotional challenges and abuses, quite frankly, that this population endures and experiences more than others. And I'm also think that a plan can match a framework, but I ask the question, should we launch into a motion to approve this if we have other LEAs who have matched their framework to their plans and tried to do a shared, I believe you get a bigger bang for your buck when you share the resources. But this is a shared resource across campuses, if I'm understanding. If this counselor's only going to work with the teachers and students at the Salt Lake campus, then I guess that's different. But if this is shared across multiple campuses, we were sort of forced to tell others who were sharing resources across their campuses to split up that money and split it into the campuses. So I just want to make sure all of our ducks are in the row so we don't end up with another letter by OSA. But
Superintendent,
I do know there's only one this community council for all of these schools. Maybe that's the defining difference, but logistically, we really were told it had to be divided out piecemeal into all the schools.
I don't think that's TSSA money. You might be talking about land trust. Is that different? Because
Nope, I'm talking about TSSA.
So Board Member Davis, this is Susan. I can tell you that this position is only used for the deaf school. And I mean, I don't want to, but I'm 90% sure that it's going to be only at the Salt Lake campus. That's what it was, what the position was used for last year. So I don't want to speak on Michelle's behalf as far as saying 100%, but that was the plan last year, and that's how it was used, how that position was utilized.
yes,
So follow up, Chair, may I?
sure.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is all of the TSSA money for all the students across the state is being used for this one counselor only to help the students at the Salt Lake campus.
well, it's for all the students in our campuses. This is not like trust money that goes to all the kids in the state, first of all. So it's USDB enrolled kids. And the plan has been to use it for part of one salary. If you wanted us, if the board required us to split it across all campuses, we could pay part of 4 different salaries, I guess, if you prefer that. But these are people
I
that are
don't
already
prefer
hired. And this position in the past, the part of this position has been funded with this money specifically. So we plan to just do the same thing again, unless you have a requirement that we're not aware of.
Thank you. I don't prefer it, but it seems like we were forced to force other LEAs to do that very thing and not share the resources from having a plan match the framework. So as long as all the powers that be know we're approving this and somehow this is different than those other ones were, I'm fine with it. I just don't want us to come back and get us into any more hot water.
Okay, thank you, Member Davis. Any other
I-
comment or question? Back to Member.
I think we need a
I thought you
motion.
brought the motion.
I tried to,
Well,
but
I think you placed it on the floor.
no,
and
I
then-
didn't.
Didn't you?
Cindy wanted to make her comments, so
Oh,
we need a motion
okay.
that we could speak to this,
All right,
so,
I thought she was speaking to the motion. Go ahead.
no.
Let's get it
the
out
board-
there.
Pardon me, you do have Brent Straight as well with his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Again, we're still not seeing hands, but I think we got, you got over there? Sorry. Okay.
But he
Members,
already
let's go back to Member Earl. She was in the process of making a motion, and then we can speak to the motion.
Well, we need a motion so that we can speak to it. So
Go ahead.
that the board approved the TSSA grant application for $68,779.68 for, do I need to give a year for 2024 or 24?
I think fiscal year 20.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is that accurate?
That-
So fiscal year 24.
Okay.
That is what I have.
All right, with that on the floor, Member Straight.
We need a second.
Did we receive
Oh,
a second?
Do we need a second? I'll second.
Thank you.
Member Straight.
I have a request, and perhaps Board Member Hart could address this, but I'm not certain to what degree the entire board has an understanding of what Board Member, I just went blank.
Davis?
Davis, what Board Member Davis was referring to in regards to the use of the TSSA money in
So,
school district.
Member Straight, is this germane to USDB's request, or is this a broader
Yeah,
subject? This is about USDB in particular and their specific request for approval?
yeah, and at the heart of it is is a discussion that's been had regarding the use of TSSA money in another LEA and how they used it was deemed improper.
Well, I don't know
we
that
didn't
that's an
want-
appropriate early, I don't know if that's germane to this topic. It seems like background,
Well,
but
it
we've
sure
got
is.
about
Okay.
15 minutes here. And so I'm not sure that broader discussion is germane or efficient. Is that, I don't know, and enlighten me, is that directly relevant to USDB's application in this particular case? I want to talk policy, but
Yes.
not go into other districts which may or may not have complied, right? We're just talking
Well-
about policy and process here.
No, we're talking about how the rule has been applied on the use of TSSA money in regards to some LEAs and how that may affect what's happening here with this application. Because we don't want to have difficulties or problems as explained by Board Member Davis.
So that was directed to Vice Chair Hart. I frankly don't have the background knowledge, and I'm not sure it's germane to USDB, but if you have anything to add, Vice Chair Hart, the question was there something about another, right, Vice Member Davis's reference to another district that has any bearing on USDB's application for approval of these funds?
As a HICAA G. Quisenberry online, are you following the discussion here? The concern at its base, or maybe if Deputy Jones is online, I'm not sure who's available, but the question is, there were LEAs that split up their money. No. They consolidated their money, schools consolidated their money, and it was found to be not following procedure for the TSSA money requirements. Does this have enough similarities that it would be considered the same situation? Or are there other procedures that we should be advising our LEA, which is USDB, to be following to be in compliance?
Vice Chair Hart, I think I'm kind of with Chair Moss on this. It does seem a little tenuous.
Okay.
As best as I can kind of track
As
discussion.
that, I feel the same way. I think that we can proceed. Superintendent, is this person, are you moving on employment documents for this person? It's a one-year hire, obviously, because it's soft money. Are you needing an answer right this very moment?
Carl, you would have to answer if there's a deadline that we have to meet. Is that the case?
There is a deadline, when it was extended to April 14th, because we needed, and your board only meets once a month.
That's
where
right.
the LEA
That's
meet
right.
Weekly. Tracy Vandemeter was kind enough to extend it to April 14th. If you want to hold this, I could reach out to her and see if she can extend it another month.
Director MP, you are absolutely correct. I feel like it's not, personally, as one board member, I do not feel like it has enough overlap that would cause a problem. So, but I think that's something it's something that we should follow up on and do our due diligence. But I am, as one board member, and recalling the conversations both in audit and in finance, I am prepared as one member to vote to move forward with this motion.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair
That
Hart.
would be
Good
fine.
discussion.
I'm good with that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Member Straight, Member Davis, and then we've got Member Klein, Bogus, and Lear.
Thank
Member,
you. I'm prepared to move forward with it also, because I've said from the beginning, I believe you get a bigger bang from your buck when you share resources. And I believe the other decision was wrong. But I do want to point out that we are combining resources here. The plan matches the framework, and we are voting for exactly the same type of thing that we told another LEA they couldn't do. I just want to point that out. I'm happy to move forward with it, and I'm going to move forward with it. The only differentiator that I can possibly see is that there's a shared community council amongst all these campuses, but even that I think is a stretch. So with that, I'm ready to vote yes, but I just want it to be known it's almost an identical situation.
all right. Let's see, who's up next? I've got Klein, Bogus, and Lear, I think is the order.
I'm just wondering why we need, or why they need a employee specifically to address the social emotional learning of deaf and hard of hearing students. As is in that last paragraph. Social emotional learning implies something very different than just their well-being. Helping students as they need help. And social emotional learning implies a universal program instead of just individual students as they need it.
Okay, is that a question or just a comment? I think Superintendent Coleman's got a response.
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Yeah, you'll notice social emotional learning is not capitalized. That's not a specific program, and this is not an employee dedicated to that. It's a school counselor who meets the social and emotional needs of deaf children, which are significantly more complex than the social emotional needs of other children, because these children do not, 90 some odd % of them do not have access to their families the way the others do. And so the counseling program at the School for the Deaf is even more important than it is for other kids who also benefit from counselors.
So
That's attached to a specific philosophy or program, other than our counselors work with these students every day as things come up in their lives.
Okay. It might be more accurate to say to address the social and emotional needs instead of social emotional learning. The word learning is inherent in social emotional learning programs, if that makes sense.
It's all about learning. They are constantly teaching them fundamental things that other kids pick up just by being involved with their communities and their families. These kids don't. So it's very specific social learning, very specific emotional learning, teaching them how to interact with each other and how to moderate their emotions. So for that reason, Superintendent Tanner used that language. And so, unless, we didn't want to really get into wordsmithing it today, but this has been sufficient for past years for the use of the TSSA money. And so we followed the same pattern we have before, not realizing that there would be so many concerns about curriculum type things.
Can I just one follow-up? Will this counselor be working with every student, or is this on an as-needs basis?
Well, our counselors work with all the students where they're assigned. I believe this one will be on the Salt Lake campus.
So it's a regular interaction that they have with them, not just as needed.
It's both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Bogus? Member Bogus, then Member Lear. And I'll just remind you, we've got 7 minutes.
Superintendent Coleman,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for your time here today, and I'm so sorry that I missed this. Are there going to be assessments of these skills that are documented in a computer system and stored in your SIS?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Member Lear?
And I think I've got my question answered.
Okay. All right, seeing no further questions, do we have anybody online that I'm overlooking, Kelsey? Okay. All right, we do have a motion on the floor. The motion is that the board review and approve, the action is board review and approval of the TSSA grant application for $68,079.68. So We'll do a roll call because we got some online. Member Wood,
Yes.
Member Straight,
Yes.
Member Norton. Well, I've got a different chart here. I don't know where it came from. Member Norton. We don't have Member Norton. Chair Moss is yes. Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Carey is absent. Member Hymas.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hart.
Yes.
Vice Chair Earl.
Yes.
Member Reel.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Member Davis.
Yes, sir.
Member Klein.
No.
Member Booth.
Yes.
And Member Bogus.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries. We are short of time, and I apologize, but we had a good discussion. We've actually got 5 minutes, so Superintendent Coleman, we've got other information items. What's your pleasure? Would you like to hit one of those? Does one of those fit within the time remaining, or do you want to defer?
Yeah, Superintendent Patton, would you like to defer till next month on your presentation?
I will, but this is the feel good stuff. So I apologize because you guys have to do so much of the not feel good stuff. So I will defer and look forward to presenting on our early childhood division next month.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And we appreciate deferring and giving us time to enjoy the feel-good stuff and the reports on the work that you're doing. So thank you. That does deserve some time. So thank you. And I think with that, then perhaps we are probably at the end of the session, but Joel, Superintendent Coleman had too many meetings. Would you like to sum up or provide another input before we adjourn?
We do have the financial report from Director Empey, and I think he can do that within the remaining 4 minutes pretty well.
Great. Thank you, Director Empey.
I'll jump into this and be really quick. We are financially solvent. We have resources to be able to pay all of our bills. The financial report is for this 8 months that ended February 28th. We had 35.3 million of revenues. And again, I'm just rounding. Our expenses were 31 million, leaving us with a surplus of about 4.3 million. The number of students served on our campus, 376 students, services being provided, the students receiving services, 2,189, total services provided to students, 4,992. On the chart, you can see our balances, and I'm not going to go over that, of enrichment funds, donated funds, and foundation that were all healthy and reconciled in each of those funds. The next report is just the budget status report. It gives all the supporting detail for the financial report. And then the last report is just enrichment funds. We have spent year to date $538,663, giving us a balance remaining of $975,000 to be spent. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we can go into more detail next month if we have the time.
Thank you very much, Director Empey. Any questions or comments from board members? Not seeing any.
Mr. Chair, can I just take a point of privilege and thank Board Member Leanne Wood for attending our advisory council? It's just really nice to have that board support and really appreciate her time and attendance.
Thank you, and thank you to Member Wood. We'll be having one more person join you, and we look forward to that more in-depth and frequent interaction. So thank you for the suggestion that we add those non-voting advisory board members. Okay, back to you then, Superintendent Coleman.
Okay, with 1 minute left, I'll just update you quickly on the space audit connected to our building requests. We had an exit conference with the Office of the Legislator Auditor General representatives on March 27th. We provided feedback from them. They updated their report a little bit, and we submitted an official written response with the help of your auditor, Debbie Davis, who was awesome, and members of board leadership, Member Norton and myself and the two associate superintendents were all involved with those discussions for a significant amount of time last week. The deadline was April 3rd. We had that submitted promptly on time. And the next step in the process will be on April 12th. That report will be released to the Legislative Audit Committee publicly in their meeting. And we will also be there to give a response. You and your auditor will be responding. You meaning a member of your board leadership will be doing that. The only other item I have is just chatting about travel real quick. Superintendent Tanner's not here because she's returning from India today with students. And that's very exciting. This next month, we have some meetings. I know I have some meetings in St. George with all the superintendents to review the legislative actions that were taken this year. And then we have, right on top of that, I'll be there for 2 days and then down with, and Carl Empey will be with me in St. George. And then I'll be in Riverside, California with Superintendent Tanner at what's called CEASD. It's basically all the deaf schools in the country, their annual meetings. And then following week, we have the League of Innovative Schools spring meetings in Mobile, Alabama. We'll be going to the Talladega School District. They are hosting this year like we did a few years ago, and we're very excited to see the innovative practices that they're doing there. And so that's my report for today is the superintendent's report. Unless Susan has anything else, that's all we have for today.
Yeah, well, there was an email that was sent to you. We have a lot of things going on, but they're all listed in that email, and I will update next time. So look forward to hearing a lot of me next time.
Sounds good. Thank you both, and we apologize for the short time frame, but thank you for fitting a lot of information into that available time, and thanks for the discussion and clarification on everything. With that, we'll take a motion. Do we need a motion? I think we do. To adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Superintendent, directors, associate superintendents, appreciate your time as always. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Okay. Okay. And we are now in session as the Utah State Board of Education. And how are you have visibility then for hands raised or?
I am going to be.
I'll log on to the Zoom.
Okay, so I gotta see yeah, I didn't realize she was texting. I'll have to,
I will watch that.
you got that? Okay.
Mr. Moss, I can track for you. I'll let you know if you have hands raised.
Oh, perfect. And feel free to just jump in and announce it if we miss a text or a prompt. Sorry, as we're moving along. So, okay, I think, let's see, let's call the roll again because we're in a separate session. And what did I do with my roll call? Thank you. All right, Member Bogus.
Yes, sir.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Davis.
Please remember to use your microphones. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Davis, are you with us? Let's call the roll again because we're in a separate session. Is that how I sound?
No, don't you hate that?
I'm way too sunny for a Friday. Maybe I'm thinking ahead to Saturday. All right. Go ahead, or are we looking at the feedback? It's probably a Zoom issue, right? Oh, gotcha. Okay. Should I go ahead, or do we need to hold off? Okay. All right. Roll call again. Member Bogus.
Yes, sir.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Davis. Member Davis, are you with us still?
He is no longer with us.
Okay, Vice Chair Earl,
Yes.
Member Green,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hart,
Here.
Member Hymus. Here. Member Carey. Not with us. Member Lear.
Here.
Member Norton. Member Reel.
Here.
Member Straight.
Yep.
Member Wood.
Yes.
And Member Moss is here. Okay. Well, welcome.
Chair, I'm here.
Sorry?
Sorry,
Is that Member
I'm
Davis?
here. I had just lost service for a minute. Yeah, I'm
Gotcha.
here.
Okay, we have all but Member Carey and Member Norton with us then. So, okay, well, this is an exciting opportunity. I'm going to be brief because we've got an hour and 10 minutes. Oh, Member Norton's with us. Gotcha. Okay, so we've got everybody but Member Carey. All right, so we're here to start a process and a discussion about our strategic plan. And we're going to talk about a little bit of background, purpose, structure, cover a bit of ground about what we've done with the strategic plan, how it's guided our work, both at the board and in our staff and out in the field. And then we're going to talk about next steps. And so today is not an action item. It's not the time to adjust or tweak any elements of our plan, but it's time to set the stage for us thinking about where we are and where we want to go in the next 5 years. So I will start. We're just going to be a little bit sort of loose and talk about principles and priorities for a minute of board members, just as a way to kind of frame what we're thinking about, big ideas and principles or small ideas and particular strategies, whatever comes to mind. But we want to just spend a few minutes talking about a big question. What is your vision for public education over the next 5 years? And we have a Google Doc available, which I think was sent out. I want to make sure I'm following the logistics here. Let's see. Does everybody have access to that Google Doc? Let's take a moment. It should be in your inbox, right?
And it's also on the memo. It's in the body of the memo.
Oh,
and so the
okay.
clerk.
So go straight through the memo in your backup then. And that's the agenda memo?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. It's right there in your agenda memo. You'll see strategic plan Google Doc, right?
Can you grant me access, please? It just,
You
they
can't
never
get
let
in
me
through the
in.
memo?
Yeah, but it doesn't have a Google account. It says that it's requiring a Google account.
I'm not able to access it either when I use my
So if I
school
come up
email
here-
address, so.
And I pull myself out of there.
I don't even have a Google account.
Oh, well, I'll
It's
be
saying
dipped
that
in.
my school address is not recognized. Yeah, I have no access.
You go in?
Right?
How is everyone online doing?
Oh, so you need.
Board Member Wood, are you good?
I thought I did. Maybe I'm using my work one.
I was
It's
just
okay.
gonna say.
I use my work one. All right, no worries.
No, I'm trying to figure out what account do I use? Because it wants me to use a Gmail account.
You want to use your schools.utah.gov and then use your sign in for that, right?
This is all the
Yeah.
same.
Yep.
So, Member Wood,
Yes.
if you log out of all accounts and you just log into Google as if you were logging into Outlook, just your state email address and your password, You don't have to create an account. It's already in there through our tech people, and you just log in. You do have a few steps to like secure the account and do your two-step verification, but you don't have to create an account. You just log out of all accounts and go in as if you were logging into the government systems.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now I just have to figure out how to log out of all my Google accounts.
If you just go to one of your Google accounts, Leanne, and then click up on your profile in the corner, it will be the circle with your initial in it. Just, it will drop down and you can add another account and put in leanne.wood@schools.utah.gov.
Chair Moss, if you're okay, I
And that
think
will
we might
switch
set up a
the account.
Padlet.
Sorry? Hey, sorry, folks, we can't hear.
Yeah,
Superintendent.
board members, I think we're going to quickly set up a Padlet that nobody needs to sign into, so
Okay.
Chief of Staff Young will post that up, and then you
Perfect.
can get into the Padlet.
Let's
And
do that,
We don't
and
have to
then
worry about all the two-step
before next time, we'll get our
verification logins.
Google stuff in shape. Okay, perfect.
So just point of information or clarity, it says here, and I quote, editors can see your view history. What does that even mean?
It means you can see. Maybe I should use my mic. It means everyone else who also has edit access to the document, you can click the version history and see who made what changes at what time. You can see the entire version history of the,
So
and you can see who opened it.
I appreciate that. That makes a lot more sense than what is written here. I was scared about this one. I'm like, Christina Googles things.
Google's scary.
My research. I don't want y'all to know all my research. Told you.
Do we need to create an account, or did I hear from someplace that we already have? We already have one.
You should have
We're
one.
gonna get a Padlet, but while we're waiting, so.
We might be having.
Switch to the Padlet as soon as that comes out, but in the meantime, let's see what we can. Here. Not in there? So should I create an account, or you have to do that, I think?
We would
If I do it, it would be not, it would kind of be rogue, right?
Have you ever had access?
I don't think so for this account. I've got a work account that I always use, so
Okay.
we rarely use it. Gotten in with the permission. Okay, well, no worries.
Where, are we supposed to be going
Sorry
someplace
about that. Is
else?
there a workaround that you can do?
Yeah, they're doing a Padlet,
Okay.
so we're just gonna use that instead. Since we use a lot of it.
I
Thank you,
will
though.
get that resolved.
Okay.
Member Norton, you are very quiet, so I know you asked a question, I just don't know what that question is.
I was just asking, I'm hearing that we are supposed to go to our Google account, which causes kind of issues for me with my computer. To be in my school account and my Google account at the same time.
Member Davis, will you text me and I'll help you?
I think that was
So-
Member Norton.
Oh, Chair Moss,
Yes.
we've got Padlet ready to go, so we can send that out, and it's just a much easier one click, and then you're not logging into anything.
Great, okay. So that'll come into our inbox, correct? That'll be.
Coming into your inbox will
Okay.
be an
So-
email from Sarah Young. Oh, from Kelsey, sorry.
From Kelsey, okay. So board members, we've got a workaround. You're gonna have a Padlet coming to your school inbox from Kelsey James.
It'll just be a link, and you'll click on the
Just a
link.
link in your inbox. Gotta do the authenticator.
Is it in our email?
Yeah, we got a Padlet. I swear, the number of things you gotta do.
Wait, do I have to have it downloaded? We could just write it on a chalkboard.
Well, let's try it. Let's see here.
Emily, go down from,
What? Let me see if I can get on.
Everyone should have the link to the Padlet now in their email. If you have already contributed to the Google Doc, you can just copy and paste that over to the Padlet, and we'll just have that be our home for the rest.
Kelsey, would you describe what they need to do though with the, how to write on with the plus sign? Not everybody's used Padlet.
Sarah's our expert, so I'm gonna defer to her.
Chair, if I may? So for Padlet, you have two options to contribute. You can either just double click in the white space and it'll bring up an opportunity to create a post. That post has options for links. You can post documents, whatever, images, whatever sounds good to you. The other option is down in the lower right-hand corner. There's a pink circle with a plus sign. You can also click on that if the double click isn't working based on what device or platform you may be on.
So the box that says publish, is that the first one you were talking about? Yeah, but I was talking about the box that says publish. Should I ignore that?
Oh, do you need help?
Yes, so, thank you. When you finish your post, you push publish,
Okay.
and then it'll populate on the screen.
Got it, okay. I am so old. Old dogs, new tricks.
This Padlet's awesome.
You can see the questions.
You can do as many as you want.
Absolutely. We got started late, but let's take 7 minutes as we originally thought, and then we'll take 3 to talk about it. And then we'll move to a couple other questions, so.
Yeah, it's not limited for today. This is just to get us started.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like this is a closed action. This is just a beginning.
If board members could please also make sure that their name is included in their response somewhere, that way we know who does what, just at a glance.
Or you can be anonymous. Or you can be anonymous if you don't want to put your name. Either way, because not everybody wants to.
Well, that's the same thing. That's just a weird. Well, I'm just saying, because it looks different.
I couldn't.
So the original intention is like you can see member Klein's here, and I don't know who these were from, but the original intent was that you would make your own post responding to that question. I just put it in there so that you could still see it since we went away from the Google Doc. But when we download the Padlet as a PDF, the comments will still be, you'll still be able to see the comments here in the PDF. That's your prerogative if you would like to do that, so that way it can be seen with everything else, like, then we could just copy and paste that. Oh. So, let me help you.
So if I wrote in this little thing, do I just hit publish and it'll go like the others? Yes. Okay. All right. Mine didn't show up.
Oh, I'll move it.
It's an inspirational visionary quote. Okay, well, let's see. Is anybody still writing? We got a lot of good input in there. I am not a master of Padlet, obviously. I can't even see mine. I think it disappeared, but that's okay. It's the thought that counts. It wasn't. I just typed USBE in the heading.
It'll come up.
right there at the top.
Oh, all right. I'll just move this over here. Is this, am I arranging other people's view or just my own? Okay,
Well, yeah, you're arranging everybody's view.
I see. All right, okay. Okay, well, anybody still need more time?
Welcome.
Yeah, but just to teach it.
I was gonna say, I feel like this is a lot more pleasant than court, let me say that. Okay, let's see if anybody wants to share, and we're gonna have this saved, I assume, right, Sarah? So we can all review each other's. So why don't we just take 5, and we do wanna move along quickly, but we got a lot of great input here. So anybody wanna share what they published? Okay. If not, we can.
I'll share, I don't mind.
Member Hymas.
It's somewhere in there. It was simple, but then there's a lot of these ones that are more simple. It was increased academic achievement for Utah students. And a little bit of background, or not background, but context is we as a board, we focus on a lot of things, and sometimes I feel like academics gets put behind. And I get that right now we're working on standards, so it doesn't maybe not feel like that all the time, but there just have been some times over the past couple of years that I thought, where's the academics in this meeting? So that's what I shared with this, is hopefully over the next 5 years, we see more and more increase in our students' ability to read, write, do simple or advanced arithmetic or math. But
Thank you, Member Hymas. Member Vice Chair Hart, you have I'm looking for, sorry, you got your light on. You weren't volunteering to share Emerson or other thoughts?
I, for everybody's pleasure, I do think that is exactly what we should do in life. Emerson said it better, way better than I could.
I only
Do you
picked
want me
on
to
you
read
because
it?
your light was accidentally on.
I didn't
but now that
mean
I
for
have,
my-
I know you didn't, but
I'm so
you know.
sorry, Chair Hart. Between the glasses, I don't know where you're at.
Oh, okay.
I
To laugh
apologize.
often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the bravery in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, a redeemed social condition, to know that one life has breathed easier because you lived here, that is to have succeeded. So what that says to me is a well-rounded and deeply educated person that can use the education that they've been afforded. So to me, it's in the pragmatic use of learning. It's not the rote learning, it's the ability to act. It's the ability to do. It's the ability to synthesize.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. Any others feel like sharing what you wrote, published? Member Bogus, I see your light on.
Oh, I can share. I don't have to share, though. Nobody else is talking.
If you're willing.
I'll fill the dead
If you're willing,
space.
the floor, let's take a couple
got
minutes and
skills
then
in
move
that
on,
area.
but yes, please.
I would love to see us produce a system with students that govern themselves, and that we don't micromanage them so much. I would like it to see us have a purposeful focus on academic excellence. I would also like us to acknowledge it and be very cognizant of the workload of our educators and to reduce that workload purposefully, just to name a few.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, let's move along and we can review each other's thoughts. We got a pretty good aggregation of ideas here, so thank you. Let me just take another couple minutes on the next question, and let's see, we do have a slide deck that is in your, did that end up in the backup, do we know? Okay, so we'll be following the slide deck in the backup, and we're on slide 4. This says 15 minutes, but I'm gonna make it quicker because we had a couple glitches, so couple of questions that are sort of taking stock questions. Again, we're going to have a few months to go through this and sort of translate vision into any thoughts about improvement with a great product that we already have, a guiding document that we've been working on. So that's what we're going to talk about, is where we are. But before we jump into that nitty-gritty, 2 more questions. What are we doing well and what can we improve on? And by we, that just means our public education system. So now, this doesn't have to be exhaustive, of course, but it's a little bit kind of stage setting. Any thoughts there on board members' feelings of what we're doing really well and where we could seek improvement, which presumably is what our strategic plan will help us do? No, let's just discuss this one real quick, and then we'll kind of jump into the substance of our discussion with the background. So, any thoughts from? What are we doing well and where do we want to work on improvement? Vice Chair Hart.
I think as a state, overall, in comparison to other states, we do allow a lot more flexibility for context than other states do. And I think that allows for much more targeted outcomes. Now, the flip side, of course, is it makes everybody's situation a little different, so it's hard to make broad blanket statements. But I do think that flexibility, while it's always something that we should be, it should always be the default position and only standardize when necessary, rather than standardize and then make exceptions for flexibility. And I think that Utah does that much better than many other states. That's one thing that comes to mind.
All right, thank you. Any other thoughts? Good things or areas for improvement? Member Lear, and then, is that Member Wood?
Yes.
Okay, let's go Member Lear and then Member Wood.
And I think I would use a variation on what Molly said and say, for an ocean liner type of system, I think that the system is learning to be flexible and make exceptions appropriately. But I also have some interest in preserving a system that gives access to students and families who are not as sophisticated. So that there's an opportunity for those students, those families, to fully participate, because the system gives them some base and support and structure.
Thank you. Member Wood.
Well, having had 4 children graduate from this system, I see that the system has provided much opportunity. Each of them has taken a different path. They're doing different things in their adult lives, but all of it is based on the foundation that they received through our system. So I think the multiple opportunities through charter schools, through CTE, through tech colleges, there's so many opportunities that are provided through our system.
Thank you, Member Wood. Member Green.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have just been so excited about, just personally seeing and experiencing with my own family and knowing in our district, is the CTE program. It's absolutely incredible, the type of classes that we have in our high schools now compared to what it was, 20 years ago. So, and then being in the standards and seeing all the different avenues that these kids can go into and how that's developing, I'm extremely excited about it. So that's one area that I feel is really has gained momentum and is only getting better.
Thank you. Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, as I've gone out to schools, what kind of stands out in my mind. And I think this is in most places in Utah, it is at least in my areas, that the school is a place where families, communities come and engage in what they're doing there. So they're not going, they do things outside, but they're this between the sports and the, debate or whatever, those are things that the communities really look to as a, it's something they rally behind, right? And something they get behind and something they want to support. And I don't, every area is a little different. I know in Morgan, where I live, football's a huge thing, volleyball's a huge, things like that, where it is, anyways, I guess what I'm saying is that there's that community there. And I see that in a lot of places that I go, that this school is just it's a strong element of their community.
Thank you, Vice Chair Earl. Member Bogus.
I think we do a lot of things really well in this state. And I'm going to come back to that. I think one of the places we can improve on is leading out as a board to facilitate positive public discourse in this state and to take the lead on that. Because the public discourse is really hostile, and I would love to see the board do something that leads out in that area. And I have other thoughts. I think if I were to say what we're doing well, and this sounds a bit negative because it is, I think that this board has done really well placating the public and not responding to the public. The feedback I get from constituents is that the word placated is used quite often, that there's a really good way to talk around the issue, but the issue is actually never addressed, or they don't feel like it's been addressed. And either way, again, that goes back to the public discourse issue, that how we're responding to people in real time is an area of growth for this board, in my opinion.
All right, thank you, Member Bogus. Member Booth and then Member Lear.
I feel like we're doing a great job of encouraging best practice. I think that there's a constant reminder to promote local control with the board. I think we reinforce achievement. We favor simplicity, and we talk a lot about, okay, we've got to streamline, make this easier, not put any more burdens. We favor simplicity. Our challenge is to find the next step to implement what we favor and make it a reality. I feel like we provide supportive oversight and we advocate for resources in a pretty robust way. And I'm excited that we're facilitating yearly progress, and I'm excited about all of the really good things that we continue to hear are happening across the country, across the state.
Thank you, Member Booth. Member Lear, and then I think we'll move on unless we've got other lights.
I spoke just a minute ago, but I just forgot to add one really important element, and that is, given the area that I live and represent, I think we do a good job a very good job as a board in allowing for individual differences from LEAs. And I look at Salt Lake and its needs, and the fact that the schools have combined with community resources to create medical centers and dental centers and model kitchens to teach refugees how to cook. And those are done in cooperation with schools, so that these folks that are new to the country or new to some of these, what we would consider basics, are able to be well enough and integrated well enough that the children can learn.
Thank you, Member Lear. Member Reel.
I was going to say one thing I think we're doing well is we are doing a lot with a little, and I mean that in fiscal. So considering the amount of dollars that are allocated to education and the amount of students we have, I think we're doing really well considering what is allocated. And then one thing I think we can improve upon is rebuilding respect and trust and support for our educators.
Feel free to elaborate or not.
As the trained professionals that they are, I think often we talk, even in standards, it's as if we don't trust them to do their job that they're trained to do. We don't trust them that they are skilled, experienced professionals that are there despite the pay because they love to do it. And I want to find a way to rebuild that, and that leads into better teacher retention and recruitment as well.
Thank you. And Vice Chair
Yeah.
Hart and then Member Bogus?
And I think it goes, think I'd like to add on to what Member Booth was saying. And kind of marry the two. The return on investment, the ROI, is pretty high for what's put into the system. And partially that's because I really feel like we don't jump immediately to the bandwagon. We're a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more careful to adopt something. I was used to, before coming to Utah, I was used to, you saw it in some of the scholarly journals, you saw it in some of the research, and immediately it was something that the state or the LEAs were jumping on and training on and adopting. And here I see a more measured response and an almost let's wait and see before we dive in, and that helps with, I think, our ROI, and I think it helps with being able to focus on the things that really make a difference. None of these things we do perfectly, and none of these things you can achieve and be done. They're all process strengths. So there are things we have to constantly attend to, and that's the other thing, is there's a remarkable amount of persistence where those bandwagons, the flip side of those bandwagons is things are adopted, heralded, and then dropped at an amazing pace. And those three things don't happen here at that same pace, and that is a significant strength that I don't necessarily think people that live their entire life in Utah actually see as much as people that come from other states, whether it be California or any other state. I think it's a real strength that we can't lose sight of, is that deliberate, strategic, careful, there's good and there's great. And let's not try everything. And we need to say no thank you to the good in order to go after the great. And that's hard to do because everybody wants to do good. And people like their own particular favorite ideas. But because we're limited in resources, I think we do a good job of being forced to prioritize, and we've actually done that with very good outcomes. I don't know how you're going to type that, Chair. Go ahead.
I got it. It's right here. Vice Member Bogus.
Thank you. I have always appreciated that Utah in particular values liberty in many, many areas, and I think the board does a good job honoring that. I would say an area of growth for us is to really pursue being an opt-in state rather than an opt-out state, so that our parents really do get the choice that we say we want to offer them, and that we can lead out in that area to ensure that we honor the faith, the home tradition, the lifestyle, no matter whether you're a home with two dads or a home with a mom and a dad, that you are leading out in those areas of liberty and choice for your children.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Well, that brings us right to 2:30, so let's greatly appreciate the discussion. Oh, do we have a hand? Member Straight?
Yes, I'm here. So I think we do an excellent job, and I think the data points out that locally, people are extremely happy with their local schools. And I mean, you look at other groups and look at people or how stakeholders are satisfied, and education does an excellent job locally. Where we sometimes have problems, or actually quite often, is on the national political education debate. I think we struggle with that on exactly how to protect our well, I'm not even sure protect's the right word, but I think that's the general idea. Secondarily, I think choice. If you look, it was a Nebo superintendent wrote a piece about all the options that Utah students have, and that's been mentioned several times. We do have an incredible amount of choice here in Utah. Anyway, those are my 2 things.
Thank you very much, Member Straight. Member Booth.
I would be really not very appreciative if I didn't recognize the fact that we do a great job of following through on what we said we were going to do. For example, we have 4 strategic goals, and I can't take really any of the credit, but I know that Superintendent Sid Dixon and the amazing team that she has surrounded herself with are absolutely committed to following exactly what the board indicated were those 4 major goals, and they are constantly referring back to them, constantly reinforcing them, constantly raising them up. So if we choose carefully, if we're smart and come up with the right goals, we're sure to have success because we certainly have the team that can make what we decide is important front and center in the public eye and in the eyes of the team of educators across the state.
Thank you. We've got Member Green and Member Bogus. We back, or is that just your prior life? Member Green, though.
I apologize.
Oh, no worries. Member Green.
Something that I maybe wanted to add on to what we can improve on. One question that I would like to ask, and it's just addressing our teachers and where they're at in this whole situation is how can we encourage and develop the heart and art of teaching? I'd be so curious to know statewide what that means to them. And if we could ask that to them, I think it would tell us a lot about what they are feeling, what they need, the things that make them passionate about what they do. And I think it could help guide us as well and could showcase maybe some areas that we might pay a little bit more attention to. So the art and heart of teaching, what does that mean to them?
Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody? Oh, you do have your line. Okay, Member Bogus.
Well, I think if
I wasn't sure if it was on. Go ahead.
I'd actually have no thoughts till people talk. Come on, that was a good joke. I have more where that came from. I would love to see, and it may not be the proper role of the state board. I would have to cogitate and deliberate on that in my own mind before I do it publicly. But I would like to see someone lead out on an authentic teacher voice. There are many teachers in this state who are deathly afraid to send an email to the state board. They're afraid to talk to their local board. And I would love to see us really lead out on finding the authentic teacher voice in the state. We have 30,000, 34,000 teachers, I believe, somewhere in that area. And it seems like we hear from maybe 50 or 60 on a regular basis. And I would love to really hear us, or see us rather, lead out on providing a broad view of where your teachers are at in this state. Some are very happy, some are extremely miserable. And I would just love to see us find a way to listen to all of them instead of listening to a few of them.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I think that covers it. Thank you all for weighing in. I'm just happy to be part of this group. These are some great thoughts and feelings and visions. So let's move forward with our process. And I've taken notes. I'm not going to attach them to names, but I might just circulate nameless commentary that I just received in addition to the Padlet that's out there.
Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry. Member Davis?
Sorry, I've been waiting a long time.
I'm sorry, we do not see you. Sorry.
That's okay.
We got you.
No problem. I just wanted to say quickly, we have over 25% of our students participating in advanced courses, concurrent enrollment or AP. And our AP students are performing in top 5 in the nation. I think that's somewhere we're doing well. I think somewhere where we can improve is that we can do better at personalizing instruction and giving teachers the resources they need to personalize instruction, no matter where a student's present level of performance is. Particularly those students working in the top quartile, but may not qualify for ALL type courses. And then another thing that we're doing well is that we have a great team of dedicated professionals working with our students, as evidenced in that Utah had the lowest learning loss during COVID in the entire nation. And one more.
We lost you, Cindy. Are you still there? Member Davis?
I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I
there
cut
you
out
go.
for a minute. The
Gotcha.
last thing, the last thing I think we can improve is I agree with Member Bogus, and I think we can better support our teacher fellows programs and keep those teachers rotating through consistently so they get some leadership opportunity and voice, and we can do things to have even broader reach across the state. But I think that's one way that we can be supportive. And the personalization was the one when I cut out. I think we could do a better job at personalization.
Okay, thank you, Member Davis. And last comment, Vice Chair Earl.
Sorry.
No?
Thank you.
This is great, thank
Listening
you.
and thinking, but I as far as improve upon, just with absenteeism and such, and this is more of what could be done more than anyways, is that I just think that the learning needs to be of such content and quality that students want to be there, educators are excited to teach, and kids feel like they're missing something if they're not there. So they have that desire to be there and be part of what's going on, and just that love of learning, because the quality and the content are of such a high standard that it piques their interest. They see the excellence. So anyways, I just think that would help with absenteeism. Absenteeism is maybe the concern. The comment was maybe some of the solution.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. I would have cut it off earlier, but this is just a great discussion. Now Vice Chair Hart's going to tell us how to put all this into concrete. No, that's a great stage setting. I appreciate that. And we are shorter on time, but I think that really helps. So let's talk about where we are, where we've come from, and then we'll get back to sort of where we think about, whether we want to take steps to achieve the vision we just talked about.
So with all of our brains primed and pumped for strategic planning and big picture thinking, there are requirements for a strategic plan. This isn't something we just dreamed up on Saturday afternoon to, occupy space. There is a requirement for it. In fact, the statute says the board shall create, maintain, and review on a regular basis a statewide comprehensive multi-year strategic plan for improved student outcomes. So if we were in the classroom, we'd probably underline some important words in there. And what we're engaging in now is creating, or the first initial infancy steps of creating. But we also have to attend to a procedure to maintain and review, and those are some things that we have considered as board leadership and are working into a regular cycle of review. The plan does need to be statewide, and it needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to go across years. One-year plans are not effective. The last plan we had for several years, a 5-year plan from what I can recall. And then, of course, the outcome needs to be pointed directly at improved student outcomes. So we also, in our board bylaws, we state that the board shall create, maintain, and review on a regular basis a statewide comprehensive multi-year strategic plan that includes long-term goals for improved student outcomes. So you can see that we align very nicely with statute in that way. So that is the mission before us. Go ahead and next slide. The purpose of a strategic plan is to unite the board around proactive efforts so that we can, and important there, proactive efforts rather than reactive, by orienting policy towards outcomes. We prioritize resources and we want to focus the work of the agency. That's what we need the strategic plan to do. So, yes. No, that's the definition we are working from for the strategic plan. That's how. No, that's the direction leadership has decided to use for developing the strategic plan. That's what we want this document to be able to do. Sure. Sure. Focus the work of the agency, and before that was prioritize resources. And of course, we don't do this in a vacuum. In this state, obviously, the legislature, because they, so much of the state budget goes to education, a small government state, and we use a large percentage of the budget. Legislature is very interested in educational issues. So the strategic plan isn't something that we can just go off and do whatever we feel like doing. We need to stay in alignment. Similar to a railroad, kind of a railroad track, we can't get ahead of our constituents. We can't get ahead of the legislature. We need to stay hand in hand as we work towards those outcomes of improved student achievement, or let me use the exact language, improved student outcomes. So we wanted to establish a baseline so that we weren't off in the weeds trying to decide first on process and then on content. We really want to focus on the content. We want this to be a strong guiding document that can do these three things that our constituents can understand, can refer back to, that legislature can as well understand and refer back to, and make sure that when we are asking for something and legislature also wants to discuss education, we're discussing the same things. We're using a common language and we're using a common understanding. So this is the framework. Skip the old line.
Member Hart, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So just as a member at large, I would be concerned that the board is not voting on this language, but if this is the language that leadership has chosen, I have great consternation with the language toward outcomes, because we can't control for outcomes. I would rather we focus orienting our policy toward high-quality inputs, or toward timeless high-quality input, something that says we are going to input the best we have into every
So-
student in this state.
I hear you, and we discussed that. However, that's why we put what the statute says. And we can't go away from the statute. The statute is not ours to change, and that clearly says improved student outcomes. And
Well, and I understand that, but it says for improved student outcomes, but we can build a policy or a strategic plan around input that does increase outcomes.
And there's nothing in here that says that we can't. There's nothing that says that we can't, when we get to that part, those parts of our plan, that we're not talking about inputs.
So then what is the language here for? I guess I'm.
Which language
And
are
I'm
you
asking a
discussing?
genuine question, this language. What are we going to use this language for because to me, it guides the whole discussion. When we talk about proactive efforts by orienting policy toward, and if we orient policy toward exceptional inputs, we will have good outcomes. But
Agreed.
It
There
flips the
isn't-
nature and the context of the conversation.
The ultimate goal of a strategic plan is to improve what happens for students in the education arena. Of course, we will outline inputs in the plan. Those are goals, those are actions, those are different parts of the strategic plan. But at the end of the day, the purpose is to have, you're not putting inputs in just to save for a rainy day. You're putting inputs in looking forward to, and there's some assumption that those inputs lead to outcomes. So the purpose is to lead to outcomes. If we didn't have outcomes, there is no, it's not like a piggy bank that we're just trying to put stuff in the piggy bank and save it. That's an input. We are looking for a system that results in. If you don't attend to results, then you can't, there's no reason to talk about inputs. And this is exactly why we don't want to debate these. We just need to know that we have to do a plan, we have to do a strategic plan that results in what the legislature has told us that our strategic plan needs to do. Now, we are always going to want to focus our work. We're not going to want our work to be diffuse. We need to prioritize. We need to prioritize our resources so they're not wasted, because like we said, we don't have a lot. So we need to make sure we have a good ROI. Those are not purposes that you are not wrong, you are absolutely right, but the ultimate purpose is effective outcomes for students. It has to be. Yes.
So I think the problem here is that if we're going to start on a strategic plan, we have to fundamentally agree on the foundation from which we're building. And if we get that wrong, then everything else goes wrong. If you put up a wall and it's a half-inch crooked, every other wall you put up is going to also be then thrown off, right? So we have to make sure it's square to begin with.
Sure.
Right? So otherwise we end up having to go back and undo again, like we're currently looking at. So when we talk about outcomes, yes, we all want great outcomes. The problem is in creating a strategic plan or system that controls for outcomes, for certain outcomes and rigid outcomes that are highly standardized, so that instead of having a strong framework that we're working from to help everybody achieve their potential, we are trying to create the same outcome for everybody so we can check the box. And so if we focus on great inputs, we can trust the process that it will create great outputs without having to control for outcomes. Does that make sense?
Right, but you can't even have a discussion on inputs without having a discussion. I think you're putting the cart in front of the horse. I think you're about 3 steps ahead in the process. This is a very basic framework that you can't say that we're not going to have, you can't,
as long as
none of these things are false. We are not,
right. As
not
long as
prioritizing.
It's not controlling for outcomes.
It doesn't say controlling
right.
anywhere.
And so that's I just want to make that clear, that we are mindful of that, and we are putting together something that allows for the best possible outcomes without controlling for outcomes, which is essentially putting a ceiling on it
With nothing,
instead of opening it up
correct.
to the greatest possibilities.
And nothing in this says we're controlling for the same
So I
outcome.
just want to make sure we
Okay.
are on the same page when we talk about outcomes, that we understand.
Right. And
we are not trying to control or
right. And I don't think you saw in any of that brainstorming a controlled outcome. We didn't say A, B, C for every single student. It was very diffuse in the outcomes. And then the strengths discussed and highlighted individual communities and individual families. I hear the fear, but what I'm saying is we're not there yet.
So
We're not there.
what I've seen is whenever you have a system like the public education system, it has the best of intentions, but because it gets so big and is so complex, that the only way to continue to manage it is by controlling for, like, that's why we have audit departments, right? It keeps everything predictable and controllable, because otherwise it gets unwieldy and it just all falls apart, right? And so like that works for a lot of systems, but in education, when we're talking about children, that can have very negative consequences, because then we are trying to control and standardize children, and that becomes a huge problem ethically, morally. It's dehumanizing, and yes, so systems just by their nature have to be systematized in order to be efficient and cost effective, right? So that's what we have to, that's why education is so much trickier, because we're talking children, we're not talking about producing a product. So we have to just keep that in mind as we work forward.
And I, like I said, I hear the fear. I think that's getting down farther than we are at this. I think if we go to the, skip past, so OLAG did an audit and found that we were not in alignment. We've heard that. I can share more about that. You can read that audit. They are concerned about alignment, and we need to make sure that we're attending to alignment. But if you go to the next slide and you look at the structure, I think you were starting to talk about structure before we were prepared to talk about structure. So now let's look at the different elements. I think, Vice Chair Earl, are you, or am I doing this? I mean, so what we wanted to do was we wanted to put forth definitions so we didn't get caught up in that. It was just a baseline. So these are the definitions, what we're going to use in moving forward in creating the plan. The vision, the mission, the goals, the strategies, and the metrics. And what you're talking about comes through in all of these things, but the purpose is something different. The purpose is why we have to do the activity, and you're talking about what's in the document. So I think that those are conversations we'll have throughout. And it's a constant tension, right? There are things that we need to control, and we look at those at every board meeting. We discuss that, where is that line? What is it that we need to control, and what is it that we can leave to communities or leave to individual schools? So you see the vision, the mission, the goals, the strategies, and the metrics, and these are the definitions we'll be using for those terms.
So,
hold on, Member Bogus.
Oh, I respectfully disagree with you that outcomes comes before inputs. You said that there was a cart before the horse analogy, and I think inputs come first before we can ever consider outcomes. And I know that that's not something you want to debate, but if we don't have a foundational understanding and agreement, we're going to end up in chaos from here forward.
I'm not talking about as we operationalize the strategic plan. I'm talking about as we develop the strategic plan. If we don't know where we're headed, then it is impossible to figure out what we need to do for inputs. I'm not talking about as we operationalize it. I'm talking about as we develop it. We need to have, and that, it's neither here nor there because it's stated in legislation that we need to do that. So that's not debatable. We can't debate that. What we can do is determine our vision, mission, goals, strategies, and metrics in the development of our plan.
So the vision and mission is stated in code.
Well, go back to the, go back.
So if we're talking about aligning with code, it is in code.
So
Well-
let's, can I
So
just, we got a
are we
couple
going
lights
to
up.
align
Can
with that, or are we
Yeah.
going to create our
Here we
own
got
vision and
Vice
mission
Chair
that's still different than code?
So at some point, there's a conflict, and Oleg discovered it, and we need to reconcile it. The details are in the audit, so yes, there is, but there's two different ones. And we have ours, and the legislature has theirs, and we need to figure it out. So, yes,
what
it is
they've-
established.
And what, more or less what they've asked us to do is to move in a direction. We're supposed to present whatever changes we have, and either they will align with us, remove it, or, anyways, that's the direction we're to head, is to work on that. And as far as outcomes, if we don't, I'm listening to what you're saying, but really what outcomes are the goals, the end things. What do we want at the end? And you do have to know where you're headed before you can say, how are we going to get there?
Then you're controlling for
So-
to reach that outcome. You are
So you're just wanting to
controlling for
move,
outcomes
you're just
again.
wanting to move in a direction and hope to get
So
somewhere?
you have a goal, and then you have quality inputs that help you go to
But
that.
the
But
goal
but you
is
don't
the-
control for those outcomes. You don't reverse engineer. That's controlling for outcomes.
Can I?
Go
Oh, okay, sorry, we've had lights on, but we got 5 minutes, we can go beyond that. I think everything you've raised is part of the process. As we talk about the vision, we're hoping in May to start talking about that, and I'll take some mea culpa for outcomes. Part of that's just the idea that you begin with the end in mind. It's just kind of a Coveyism. The problem is every kid in Utah has a different end, right? So what we're talking about is how do you create inputs that allow each student to reach their own end? And you're not controlling for it, but you're thinking about that. Yeah, you're thinking about that. What kind of system allows that to happen, right? And then the inputs come along. So I don't think you saw in anybody's vision, a sort of, I want to control this or that, but there was a lot of idea about where kids want to go to. That's what we're talking about. So I don't think it's quite that rigid. It's an opportunity for us as we go through each stage to say, what do we want to create? What are the inputs that would allow each student to reach that end, that goal? And sort of do some thinking with the end in mind in that way. But it's their end, right? It's the student's end that we're trying to reach. So I don't want to inject here, but we are hoping to talk a little bit about what we have. These are concepts and they're subject to discussion. That's what we're going to do. So, we're going to go through each stage, but let's maybe just spend a few minutes if we can, just sort of going back and seeing what we've got, what we've been working with, and then that's what we're working on, because we have something that prior board and staff put a lot of effort and thought into, and a lot's been done, and we have in here some of the ROI and success stories from that. And then the question is, how do we move the ball with our time on this board? We've got a couple years or 4 years or whatever, and how do we advance on the good work that's been done? So right now, maybe just a little bit of sort of the, setting the stage in the background. We got a few minutes. That's member Vice Chair Earls.
And I'm just going to read through, because that's what what we have. I'm just read through what we have. That's what we're up for re-looking at, is what our vision is, what our mission is. Those are the things that we're going to be tackling first, because those will articulate the direction we're headed and how we get there. And we'll look at those strategic, the goals and then the strategic ways of moving about it. So first of all, where am I at? Just that, our vision is, upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives. So as we move forward, we'll be looking and saying, is this continue to be our vision? Is there something we want to add to it? Is there something we want to take away from it? And that's the next couple of months what we're looking at. So the next one, mission, the Utah State Board of Education leads by creating equitable conditions for student success, advocating for necessary resources, developing policy, and providing effective oversight and support. And then we've defined that last year. Was it last year or 2 years ago? No, not equity. We defined it 21. Yeah. So these, once again, this is where we've previously been. That's the point of showing these, is this is the previous items, and we can consider those, and then we'll need to look at the legislative vision and what they have, and then decide where those need to be mixed, where those need to be changed, or the direction we want to head. That was the purpose of starting with kind of a brainstorm, so that we could say, okay, these are things we're thinking of before we're like, okay, now we're looking at what we have up here. How do we match those up so those are consistent as a board, something that we can get behind and move forward on, okay? And then these are the current goals. So each student starts strong through early grades with a foundation in literacy and numeracy, personalized teaching and learning. Each student and educator has access to personalized teaching and learning experiences. Safe and healthy schools. Each student learns in a safe and healthy school environment. An effective educator and leaders. Each student is taught by effective educators who are supported by effective school leaders. These were the agreed upon back when this was put in place. These were the 4 areas of focus. And then is someone doing those, or you want me to keep doing those? I don't know if do we want to go through each one of these? These have been broken down, so.
We could cut to Superintendent Dixon and talk about the goals and where we've moved forward on those. Is that, let's see.
We'll take your direction, sir, whatever you want us to do. Do you want us to just indicate that these are the strategies that the board,
Sorry, the strategies, yeah.
the strategies that the board approved for the goals? So the board worked out the mission through the goals, and then staff brought strategy. So through the goals, we had a lot of stakeholder input. Then when it got to the strategy part, staff worked on those strategies from a variety of resources, but we brought those to the board for the board to vote on. So there were some adjustments, but everything prior to that was, I just want to be clear, was very board-driven. The strategies, back to the point that you all were making, like the inputs, how do we get to that, to the actionable actualization of the goals? So we brought those forward, board approved those, and then these strategies are what we hold ourselves accountable to as staff, and we have a process that I can share with you depending on how, if you want to do that, talk to the outcomes, wherever you want to go, because I think we're out of time. We can come back to that at another session.
I wonder if members would rather extend to 3:30 or come back and hit this. What we have teed up next is a review of the goals that were set, and then the strategies that were put together to achieve those goals, and some of the success that's been had in that effort since the last plan came into effect. So goals, strategies, success, and we could take another half hour now, or we could come back. I mean, it's been 5 years, so I don't know that we're gonna throw anything off if we defer. On the other hand, we're all together. If we want to take another half hour, we can go through some of this. Any objection to going to 3:30?
Your mic, ma'am.
I don't care either way, but I wonder if because we did the brainstorming part, it would be good before we dive into the rest of it to have this happen later so that we're thinking, so we're not forgetting the stuff that we're going to go over today when we go into more.
Yeah, well, good point. I mean, what we had here was not action but background, and so we follow the sense of the board. I mean, brainstorming and then a little bit background without taking action, and then we sort of would dive into, okay, what do we do about it next? But we could go either way. Again, it's been 5 years. We're not going to hurt anything if we hold. There's some good material that our leadership has put together, board leadership or staff leadership. So we could do it now. We could come back. I think it's important to see, though, what the process was and where we've come. And then we start the process of, okay, what are we going to add to that, right? So whatever thoughts people have, we can do another half hour. We'll probably need to come back. But any objection to going to 3:30? Maybe we give that a shot and then see where we end up. Remember later.
I don't know that, I mean, I was just looking at the mission as laid out in the legislature, in the code. Very different than what our mission is. I have mixed feelings about that. I'm troubled that the legislature tells us what our mission is, especially when it doesn't accept the findings of the audits that are about them either. So I'm not one who would say they've said jump and we say how high. I'm more inclined to say we took into consideration the language in the code, because I heard at one point if this needs to be realigned, it needs to be aligned, but not necessarily that you need to come to us.
But that's our process, Carol,
So-
is in May, start talking about that. The code that outlines things is pretty extensive. It doesn't really read like a mission statement. There are principles in there. So I think that's a dialogue where we understand the direction.
But let me, yeah.
And we go back to them.
Let
But
me just get the
that's
end
our
of
hope
the
for May, is to talk about the mission.
And, okay, but anyway, I think it's very different. So we've got to start somewhere, and I'm not really good at this, so I don't know where to start. But I did want to say, the one piece I wanted to say for today is if somebody can summarize our successes in 2 minutes, that's great. But I don't want a cheerleading session, because I think we've done some really good things, but I'd rather do more substantive, how do we want to change this?
So why don't we conclude with the background? Today was stage setting and background. Maybe we can ask Superintendent Dixon to hit, if that fits. What were the goals, what were the strategies, and what have we done? Because there's some of that in there that kind of covers it. I think we can cover that in our remaining time today if we extend it a bit and then come back. Yeah, that's where we're going. Yep.
So I
So
might,
goals and the progress. I think if we start on 17, that's probably
I might propose something different if you're willing to entertain it, Chair Moss.
okay.
Okay, so we have a website where we've kept all of this of our updates on our goals and our strategies. I think it would be good to just clarify this slide and then the next slide, and then jump maybe to slide 40.
Sure.
And just
Yeah.
so that the board knows the timeline and kind of what you've developed as a timeline and what you're thinking.
You bet.
And then we have a website where we have, for those of you that want to dive into the data and the progress, that we can have Kelsey send out to you with a direct link so you're not searching for it. And then those of you that want to do that deep dive, we can come back and answer questions that you might have.
Let's
Are
do
you
it.
willing to go there?
Yeah.
All right. So I think the last part in that chart that I believe Vice Chair Hart shared, and then Vice Chair Earl went back to the chart of the mission, vision, goals, strategies. This is talking about the metrics. If you'll just land where you were, Kelsey. Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about how we set these goals. And this speaks to, all right, so we've got a mission and vision. Where are we holding ourselves accountable? And some of these were set forward by the legislature at the time, and then we added a few in. And we started with 100%. We said, all right, if 100% of our students in the Utah education, public education system deserve to be on grade level by third grade with literacy, deserve to graduate from high school, deserve to be able to hit all the 4 benchmarks on ACT, which is what readiness coursework is, to be proficient in math, science, et cetera. If we believe that 100% of our kids deserve to be there, then let's take a look at our baseline, and from there, we'll set our goals to close that gap between where we are and 100% by a third. We knew that that was ambitious, and we got pushback from a lot of people. But we also said, if we don't set the bar high, if we don't hold ourselves accountable for high standards, we will never get there. Because what we had seen in the past is trying to hold ourselves accountable for 1% increases, 2% increments, and how can you be flexible, bold, brave, do things differently if you're always just trying to inch along? So we recognize that we set a very high bar for the system by going there. So you can see on the next slide, and I think Board Member Klein, you were referring to this earlier, you know, how are we doing and according to the goals we set for ourselves? Well, you can see that we really have only met 2 of those goals. So in the middle is where we started. That was the baseline 5 years ago. And then in reference to the direction of the slides, and the arrows rather, sorry, and the color, you can see that we met 2 of those goals. So high school graduation, which is a little bit of a hard needle to push statewide, but we've met, we have not met, but we're trending towards that goal. Thank you, Sarah. I knew I was saying that incorrectly. And then on the readiness coursework, the same thing. We're trending towards meeting that goal. And that is based on those 4 areas measured on the ACT. So the College Board, ACT, they look at if you hit a certain benchmark, saying that you're ready for college, you can be successful in college in the 4 areas that are tested, then if you've done it for all 4, you've hit what we call readiness coursework benchmark. And we have not been good at doing that in the past. We've hit on 2 or 3, but to be able to hit all 4 of those at this high of a percentage. So that is an academic major. But we definitely, if you look at the appendices, or the appendix, you will see that we were on a upward trajectory, and then COVID hit. Like the rest of the world, we took a dip. And then we've come up again, but we're not back to where we were pre-COVID in some areas. So there's more data that you can dive into to see that. But I just wanted to explain these targets, how we set the initial target. We looked baseline, tried to bridge that gap by a third between where we were and 100% of our students. And this is where we are today. So 2 areas we're trending upwards, and we would be on target. And the other areas we need continuous work. So with that, I think I'll just say, Kelsey will send you the link where you can see how we've held ourselves accountable for the standards and the goals, because I think that's a really important question. And we can dive into that in a further meeting. And then I think I'll just throw it back to you, Chair Moss, to slide 40 and then closure. That's all right?
That works great. I do see a couple lights. Member Bogus and Member Klein.
Here, I'll take it offline. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm just thinking as far as looking at goals, based on that last chart, that we should be having maybe a goal around having our proficiency rates match our graduation rate, so that we're not just graduating kids that aren't proficient. Because graduation rate, a high graduation rate in and of itself is not a good metric if the others are not up to par with it.
Great point. And all of these will be considered, I think, as each stage goes along. I mean, none of this is going to be just leadership dictated. We're going to address, if you look back at slide 9, that's kind of a roadmap. We'll talk about the vision and mission. We got questions about the legislature, question about where we want to go. Then we'll get to the goals, and we'll debate exactly what you just talked about.
I was just going to add to that, make sure that when we get those proficiency rates up, it's not because we dumbed down the curriculum in order to get there.
Oh, come on. That was our plan. Okay. Yeah, that. Yeah. Hey. Yep. As corporate counsel, I've seen some weird stuff. So we don't want to be part of that. Yep. We want to stretch and then get there. So let's turn to slide 40.
Dr. Dixon, wasn't there, or Chief of Staff Young, there was some research somewhere, remind me, that Utah did exceptionally well, and we didn't inflate our scores the way other states did. That speaks directly to that point and made me very proud to be in Utah. Can you just do the 2-minute summary of that research?
Yeah, we were designated as a truth teller, meaning that when they look at the data behind and all of the infrastructure behind our end-of-level tests, and then they compare that with NAEP, they found that a lot of states were not really, their end-of-level tests were not accurate according to NAEP, like they were way apart in terms of rigor. And what they found with Utah is that what we test on our end-of-level tests are right aligned with NAEP. So they call us a truth-telling state, and I don't remember the number, but it's a small n size of truth-telling states that we were. Doesn't mean the others are lying, but they just don't have their end-of-level assessments aligned with NAEP. Is that what you were referring to?
They were setting their stand, so their pass was a very low NAEP score, and our pass was a very high NAEP score. And that speaks to that directly. I'd rather have a low score that's truthful than a high score that's a lie.
Just a quick question, Superintendent Dixon. N is less than 10, like N is in an algebraic equation? That's what, when you say N, that's what you mean?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of just framing next steps then, and I would encourage our staff have put together slides on each of the goals. So we have early learning, personalized teaching and learning, safe and healthy schools, effective educators and leaders. Those are the 4 goals that were framed up 5 years ago. And staff have put together specific outlines of the outcomes, the ROI on those goals. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. You'll see slide 34, measures of the strategic plan as a driving force in terms of our policy requests and funding from the legislature. So please take a look at that at your leisure. And again, we're taking stock of what we have and where we've come, so we can start talking about our part in this. So moving forward, slide 40, there was a lot of stakeholder input. Last time was creation of the first strategic plan, right? That was the first we had. So that took a tremendous amount of stakeholder input, lots of discussion. We're now at a point where we're considering where we are, where to go, but we'd encourage a revisit of that. So if every board member could think about ways you could go back and gather some stakeholder input in the next month as we begin the process. Next month, we'll talk about mission and vision. We're not quite going to goals yet. That'll be a process that June, July, we've got some time to really give us some good thought. But we would encourage everybody to go back and do that in whatever way you think is going to gather that input best. We'll talk about, again, refining the vision in response to legislative audit. Talk about mission, vision, probably May and June, goals in August, September, and strategies in October and November. So we have some time. And I think that may wrap it up for today, subject to questions. But we greatly appreciate the work of our staff in putting this together. So, you know, we can sort of stand on high shoulders, as they say, and see what happened so far. And the vision that we talked about today and the ideas for improvement are what we're going to now try to make concrete as we go forward. So appreciate everybody's thought and input. Any other final comments? And before we adjourn for the weekend, this is going to be a good, solid, deliberative process. We got a lot of perspective and experience here. So we'll try to guide it as leadership. We don't want to dictate, you know, specific terms. We'll guide the process and try to follow some good, solid, you know, principles of engagement. We want to make sure we move it along, but we give everybody an opportunity to take part in that. Member Klein?
Oh, I just had, the thought occurred to me of a book that I've read that I would recommend as we go through this process, called The Book of Learning and Forgetting by Frank Smith.
By who?
Frank Smith.
Frank Smith. Book? Molly says she's already got it. Frank Smith.
It's very short.
Yeah, it's a beach read.
I'm flying to the beach tonight to meet my family, and I'm going to grab it at the airport. So
No, you won't be able to. You won't be able to.
I can't find it at the airport. All right. Any other thoughts, suggestions? Book.
Maybe I read faster than you can, but I thought you were like.
Oh.
Learning and forgetting. It's
Okay.
for you.
Any other book recommendations for strategic planning? I'm kidding. I'm torturing Jenny. Yeah. What is it?
I do believe it would be incumbent upon this board to get the speed of trust, read it, and really cogitate on the principles set forth within.
Speed of Trust. Who's the author?
Covey.
Steve Covey. Does everybody know his brother was actually in one of these seats? John Covey was on this board. Carol might remember when he was here, but so we got some Covey connections here. Well, anyway. There we go. Good book tips. Feel free to throw them out at any point in the process. Thank you all
I'd like
for
to make a motion
coming,
to
and Jenny
adjourn.
would like to make a motion. Motion to adjourn's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. See you in May.
Was that green? Was that green? Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's the